Okay, so recording is on. All right, folks, so welcome to our first EDU Endpoint office hours for 2025, even though the deck says 2024. I did not update the date, but we are in 2025, January 7th. So welcome, thank you for coming by. Today, we will be talking about, like I mentioned just a few minutes ago before we started this recording, we're going to be talking about our Ignite recap. We're going to kind of go over some of the announcements that we made back in November, but we're also going to be talking about some new things as well that has come up. Usually between December and the beginning of January, it's fairly light for us. We don't have a lot of things going on, but sometimes there are some things that get announced, and so we'll talk about those things. For our upcoming agenda, we don't, I'm not sure why that skipped ahead. For our upcoming agenda, we don't have anything scheduled speaker-wise. We're actually working on figuring out who we're going to get to come and speak from our engineering teams in the next couple months or so. So we'll be to be determined in terms of who that's going to be. So for right now, we'll probably just have some open Q&A sessions, just kind of going over some announcements and things like that, just like we normally do. But back at Ignite, we had announced this product called Windows 365 Link. And if you were on the call on December 10th, back then we had went over what the Link device was, and it's effectively a small purpose-built device that connects into Windows 365. So it's got a small Windows operating system that's completely managed by Intune. And you boot the device, and it, as you can see on the screen here, it can power two 4K monitors. It has full peripheral support, and it connects you directly into a Windows 365 cloud PC. Now, this kind of device, the use cases that we see for this device primarily revolve around situations like hot desking, where hybrid workers may come and go from an office, also call centers, where you might have frontline workers that just jump into a cubicle. They do, they take support calls. They might be sales reps. They hop onto a PC. They use the cloud PC, and then they leave for the day. They don't really have a physical device that they bring into the office. And then we have specialized spaces. So you could have, like maybe frontline workers, receptionists, maybe scientists or researchers. And in those situations, they might just hop into a desk, use the PC for a bit, and then move on to something else. And so these are the three main scenarios that we're targeting for something like Windows 365 Link. Now, for the device itself, the hardware side of things, the device completely fanless. It's not going to make any noise. The dimensions of the device, it's about like a 120 millimeter case fan for a PC. It's a very small device, less than 5 inches by 5 inches in size. Weighs less than a pound. As I mentioned earlier, it's got dual 4K monitor support, one HDMI and one display port on the back. As you saw in the video there, you can see the device turning around. You can see all the different ports that are on it. We've got 3 USB-A, 1 USB-C, and a 3.5 millimeter audio jack. There's an Ethernet port, Wi-Fi 6E, and Bluetooth 5.3 support. We also, like as I mentioned earlier, we have a customized Windows operating system on this. This is not a full-fledged Windows Enterprise, Windows Pro SKU. It's a completely stripped down version of Windows that has a small OS footprint with a smaller set of applicable configuration policies that you'd be able to deploy via Intune. And we also enable the security baseline policies are enabled by default on the device as well. Now, if you'd like to learn more about what we announced on Windows 365 Link, there are a number of links that we have on the screen here for Ignite. Since this is being shared through PowerPoint Live, you can just click directly into these links here, and these will take you to the pages. I will be also publishing the deck. We're going to do better this year on getting the decks out and getting the videos recorded and posted up for you guys to get access to. So we'll be doing that after the call as well. Now, one other thing that we had announced, and I didn't have any slides on this one in our last meeting, so this is all new. we announced something called Windows 365 Frontline in shared mode. And what this does is it effectively gives you a Windows 365 cloud PC using our Frontline licensing. And we'll talk a little bit more about Frontline here just a second to talk about shared and dedicated modes. But with shared mode, what this effectively does is it creates a Windows 365 cloud PC that allows a user to sign in, do what they need to do, and then when they sign out, we delete the entire user profile. So these are for non-persistent, non-persistent is probably the wrong term to use here, but it's a scenario where you've got a cloud PC that just, we don't keep the user profile information at all. The VM itself is still persistent. So if you install applications from Intune, for instance, we don't ever blow the entire VM away. So this is completely different from a non-persistent scenario. But in this scenario, where I kind of see this work, especially in education, is for those of you that might have bring your own device scenarios, like you might have students, especially if you're in higher ed, you might have students that might have a MacBook, or they could have a Chromebook or some other device that might not be Windows. Then they need access to a Windows PC. Now, what some of you might be doing today is you might be using Azure Virtual Desktop, and you could be using Azure Virtual Desktop with multi-session. And so you have a bunch of people just signing in all at once. They're all using the same PC, and they're able to concurrently sign in at the same time. And in that scenario, you probably, you have to manage the host pools, and there's a lot of extra work that you have to do to manage that entire infrastructure. Well, with shared mode within Windows 365 Frontline, it's very simple to just spin up the VM, push out your applications, get the device configuration the way you want, and then when your users sign into that device, they use the applications that they need. When they're done with it, they sign out, their profile's completely blown away. And so in that matter, you don't really have to manage the device and manage like the host pools like you do with AVD, which takes a lot of effort to update the host pools and keep those things scaled up and scaled down and things like that. So when it comes to the different Frontline choices, so with Windows 365 Frontline, we have dedicated mode, and then we have shared mode. And so with dedicated mode, if you pay attention to the little picture that shows the individual users and the PCs, with Windows 365 Frontline, when you buy one license, you get access to 3 cloud PCs. But the devices can only be used at one device per user per time. So what this basically means is that we can't share those 3 PCs all at the same time. We can't have 3 users using 3 cloud PCs. They can only use the PC during their shift. So think of dedicated mode as like shift worker scenario, where we've got a user that signs in for 8 hours. They use that PC. When their shift is over, the next person that signs in, they've got their own cloud PC. It's a dedicated cloud PC just for them, and it's only for their shift. So as each user signs into these PCs, they get a persistent experience. It's the same experience every time. And if they've made changes to that OS, the next time they sign in, those changes have persisted for them. With shared mode, when you look at the image over there, we've got one PC that multiple people are signing into. And in that scenario, we blow the user profile away as those users sign out. And so to get more of a visual on this, Windows 365 Enterprise, you effectively have a license that you purchase per user, and that is a persistent VM for that user. So if we had 3 users, they can concurrently use the PC whenever they want, doesn't matter. And you see that we have overlapping times here. When we look at Frontline, we have part-time users. And so in this case, for the Frontline dedicated scenario, we have those 3 users that we talked about earlier. They're using 3 separate cloud PCs, but they don't overlap because they can't concurrently use them at the same time. And then with shared mode, this is where we also can't concurrently use the VMs, but in these scenarios, we might have someone that might need to use the Office suite of applications for writing a paper, or maybe they have to use PowerPoint or Excel or something that maybe they don't have on their local machine. You could have, AutoCAD, or you can have some large scale application that they couldn't install locally on their box. They could go and use Windows 365 Frontline Shared, use that application for a short period of time, and then when they sign out, their profile is gone. The next person can sign in and do whatever they need to do. And so in these three different scenarios, we have different, different usage patterns that would be used by each individual user. Tom, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm curious. So if let's say I have, 5,000, 10,000 users in my college, I would be having 10,000 PCs?
Yeah, no. So even though you might have 10,000 users, it depends on what the concurrent usage pattern is for your users. So all 10,000 probably aren't signing in at the same time, right?
Correct. The way you said that, though, it sounded like, user one, user two, because you're saying on the other ones, it's a dedicated user assigned to each PC.
Right.
So these, you could have a pool of 10. The 10,000 are signed as long as there no more than 10 are signed in. They're just in line.
Yeah. So if you think about this like a computer lab,
right,
and you've got a line of students that are sitting outside the lab
right,
waiting for the 10 PCs to be free, that's, so that when the 10th PC is no longer in use, you have 9 people using, you have one that's free, then the next person in line gets in and they can use the PC.
Right. Okay. The way you said it, it sounded the other way. I was like, okay, that's got to be wrong. I got to misunderstand that. So
yeah, that's more like the top part there that says full time for Windows 365 Enterprise. Like it would be 10,000 users. You would need 10,000 licenses for all of them.
Right. Exactly.
So you would just need to know, like, okay, how many concurrent users am I going to realistically have? And then also the other thing with Frontline is that, like I mentioned, when I started talking about Frontline, is that when you buy one license, you actually get 3 users that can use that license. So it's a 1-to-3 model instead of a 1-to-1, which is what Windows 365 Enterprise is like. So it's a cheaper way of getting into Windows 365. And then, like I said, you would just purchase the number of Frontline licenses depending on how many concurrent users you think you're going to have. So if you think that, okay, we're going to use like 30 users, then you would need to have 30 PCs provisioned. So with Frontline shared, it would be one license would need to be purchased. You would get 3 PCs. So realistically, it'd be like 10 licenses for those 30 users because it's 1-to-3.
Okay, I see. Yeah, when last time you guys talked about it, you acted like it would be a cost saving, and I'm starting to see that at this point. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that's Frontline shared. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing. What I want to do is show what this looks like in Intune, just to get some clarity to what this is in the portal. So let me pull this over here. Okay. So within Intune, if you go under devices, and if you don't have any Windows 365 licenses in your tenant today, then you're not going to be able to get into here. There's going to be a big window that says you don't have access. But once you have a license for Windows 365 in your tenant, this Windows 365 node will light up, and you'll see what I see on my screen here. And when we go into here, we can create a provisioning policy. And with these provisioning policies, you have some options here for how you want to license. And so if I just type in something here, under Frontline, there's dedicated and there's shared. And when we create these policies, I'm not going to explain all this stuff. I just need to get through to configuration here. So as we create our policies, we can specify our image that we want to use, and then what the configuration is like. What you're going to notice is that when I go to try to assign, with Windows 365 Enterprise, I have to have a license, and I have to assign that license to a user. But with Frontline, I don't have users to assign the licenses to because I don't know who the users are going to be. Like if I had a lab, I don't know which users are going to come and use the lab and which aren't. So within Frontline, what I do is I come in here and I find the group that I want to target, and then so if I go in here, I'll just pick my student group, for instance. So these are all the students, but I don't know from all the students like how many of them are actually going to use Windows 365. I'm going to make it available to them, but I'm not going to go and assign them a specific license. Whereas with Enterprise, I have to go into M365 Admin Center and I have to start actually assigning licenses to the users. Over here, I just pick my group of users that I want to target to, but I don't assign a license to them. I then pick the cloud PC size that I want this group to use. And so in this case, I've got 2 cloud PCs. And then for my assignment, I can give it a name, and then I give it the number of PCs that I have available. So if I've got 2 here, I can put a total of 2 for the licenses that I've got left remaining. And so if I just put test here, this will then create a provisioning profile. I'm not going to do this because I don't need to spin these 2 VMs up. So I've got plenty of these already in the tenant. But this would start to provision those cloud PCs. Takes about 20, 30 minutes for the PCs to provision. A lot of that also depends on if you're using hybrid intra-join or if you're just using intra-joined machines. It could be a little bit longer, or it will actually be a little bit longer if you're using intra-hybrid joined machines. But once that's done, then the PCs are available for the user to sign into. And so for the user, I've got the Windows app here. So the Windows app, you just go to the Microsoft Store, do a search for the Windows app, and from within there, when you sign in with your user account, so in this case, I'm using my student account, this student has all these different PCs that have been deployed to them via Intune. And so these are all Frontline PCs, but I've got my Frontline dedicated are the ones that just say Frontline, so these 3 here. And then I have Frontline shared, which are the shared ones that I described earlier. So if I click into any of these, this will sign me into my Frontline shared PC. I've got single sign-on turned on, so I won't get prompted. Well, I say that, now I do get prompted. That's because I had actually signed out and signed back in. Oh, wrong password. And get my effect. Check. Let's go through the MFA challenge. And so the sign-in process here, if you ever use shared PC mode on like a physical device, it's going to look very similar to that, where it says preparing Windows. It's not going to have the big flashing screen that shows like we're getting everything ready. But I'm in California, and this PC is actually in central US. I believe it's in Texas, or could be in Iowa. But so for me, there's going to be a bit of latency because I'm going to central. I don't. See what my latency is here. So 46 milliseconds, not bad. If I connect to a cloud PC that's up in Redmond from California, it's like, I don't know, 11 milliseconds or something like that. But performance-wise, for me at least, it's been fairly decent. Haven't had too many issues with that. And all my Intune policies have been targeted directly to this cloud PC. So when I open up Edge for the first time, I'm not going through the first run experience. Edge has been completely configured through Intune. So I just go in and I use it without having to get prompted for anything. OneDrive is completely configured as well. So when you go and look at my OneDrive content here, that's there. I also, because this is for students, or my student account is signed in. Actually, let me do this a different way. Like I won't be able to run PowerShell. It's been blocked. Same thing with command prompt, regedit. Yeah, blocked all that kind of stuff through Intune. So this is configured just like any of my physical devices. It's configured just the same up in the cloud. So Intune's managing all of that. And when I sign out and I sign back in, it's going to be hard to really demo all of this in the amount of time I've got. But signing out and signing back in, if I went to my users folder, I wouldn't see any other user profiles because all the user profiles get removed from the Frontline shared PCs. So it's a quick and easy way for students or any bring your own device scenarios that you guys might have, or just maybe even temporary users. You might have maybe substitute teachers. Could be, low user, people that don't really use PCs all that often in the organization. They might just need to sign in for something real quick, maybe do a time card or a timesheet. If that's the case, then these PCs might be an easy way for them to get access to that too. So yeah, so let me sign out here and we'll move on. Any questions? Don't see any hands raised. Okay, yeah, it looks like Scott's here now. Okay, so Scott and Patty have the chat taken care of. Thanks, guys. All right, let's get back to the deck. Okay, cool. So a lot of the links here are somewhat duplicated from the December 10th meeting, although there are a lot of new ones as well. So we did talk about the enhanced hardware inventory. In fact, we had Liz Cox from the Intune engineering team. She presented back September, October, somewhere around there, about our enhanced hardware inventory functionality. That's now in Intune. I've set it up. It seems to work fairly well. Not a whole lot really to do there. Just create a policy targeted to your devices and pick the different objects that you want. I think I even showed this on the December 10th call. So it's a pretty straightforward feature to turn on. We also announced at Ignite that we are expanding our support for Apple specialty devices. This is primarily the Vision Pro. Into now, either now, I don't know exactly when the date was that's going to be added. I don't know if it may have already come, or it could be coming at the beginning of the year, but we've got a blog post on expanding that functionality. We've also made updates to our beta APIs for Windows endpoint security and administrative templates. I'm not sure if any of you guys are doing anything with the graph. If you are making, if you have like custom apps or things that are leveraging the graph, and you're leveraging the Windows endpoint security and administrative templates nodes, or those endpoints within the graph, you'll want to take a look at the changes that we're making there. And for Intune 24.12, we released that back in December. There's a link here to the What's New page. Not a whole lot new that I wanted to specifically call out, but there's a few things that we added in 24.12 that you might want to take a look at. And then something that came out over the break, that the date here has come and gone. It was December 27th. But prior to this, we had put a message center post that said you needed to update your network endpoints for Win32 apps and PowerShell scripts. This actually also impacted .NET. Our download page for .NET was hit by this. But what this is there's a content delivery network provider that we used to use that went bankrupt and were purchased, or some of their assets were purchased by another CDN provider. And we, because they were going out of business and there were all these changes were being made, we had to adjust the CDN and the endpoints that we were using that were targeting that CDN. We had to adjust those. So if you've noticed any issues with Win32 apps or PowerShell scripts, and you had, on your firewall, you had specified the correct endpoints originally for Intune, and then things just stopped working or weren't working the way you expected them to, you could actually be impacted by this. This wasn't, it came out probably while most of you might have been on holiday, and so you may have missed this. So if that's the case, take a quick look at the link here. This will take you to the message center post, or at least a archives message center post that you can go and look at. Windows 365 and AVD, as I mentioned, Frontline Shared is now available in public preview. We've also made some security modifications to Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop. The details are in the blog post that you see there. We also introduced some new functionality around enhanced host pool management. So for scale up, scale down, and modifying your session host configurations, like the VM sizes and things like that. We've made it much easier, I think, to manage those host pools with some of this new functionality that's come out. So check that out if you haven't seen or heard of those things yet. We've also announced unidirectional clipboard support for Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365. You can configure that in Intune now. You also can do it through group policy. And then I think it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, we published a post around enhancing your ability to move Windows 365 cloud PCs. It's actually going to land at the end of January, but we wanted to get the announcement out a bit early. And so we're making it easier for you to move not just single cloud PCs, but you can do bulk cloud PC moves as well. So if you have I think it's 100 at a time, that's the max limit. You can move those in chunks rather than single devices. You can also move frontline PCs as well as enterprise PCs, which before you could only move enterprise PCs. So made some enhancements there. Config Manager, a lot of you guys were asking me about when's 2409 coming out, because 2409 had support for Windows 11 24H2. That came out just, I think it was like the day or two before we had our December 10th meeting. So that's there now. What was really interesting is that 2411 technical preview came out before 2409. So both of these are now out. 2409, I think, is hitting the main ring now, so it's not under fastering like it was back on December 10th. So you guys should see 24.9 available in your Config Manager consoles now. You can upgrade to that. That's going to get you your Windows 11 24H2 support. And for Windows, lots of stuff on Windows. At Ignite, we announced something called Hot Patch. We spent a lot of time talking about Hot Patch last time. There is now a skilling snack around Hot Patch, and this goes into both how Hot Patch functions on client and server. There's a number of links that the skilling snack takes you to. There's a Ask Me Anything post that we had put out, or there's a video that you can watch on that. So take a look at that for Hot Patch if you're looking at for more information there. Hot Patch is available for education. This was something that our team had fought for to get it as a part of education. This is not auto patch, though. However, when you start going through Hot Patch, there is a report that shows you how Hot Patch is working within your environment. That's actually underneath auto patch. We are aware that that's a problem that should be addressed. I don't exactly know when, but that report should be available to those of you that are in education that have A3 or A5 SKUs. You will be able to get access to that report, so you can see how Hot Patch is working within your environment. But there's no ETA that I'm aware of for that report to be available just yet. There was an update for Windows News You Can Use. It's just a collection of links around various things with Windows. Administrator protection on Windows 11. That's now available. That came with Windows 11 24H2. This is a bit different than user account control. But they're kind of similar in functionality, but it's a completely different way of protecting administrator accounts on Windows 11. So click into that link to learn a lot more about that. We published a big blog post on all the different Windows news that was released at Ignite, so you can click through into that. And the Copilot key experience for commercial organizations. We are providing some guidance on how to control this. Because if you haven't noticed or haven't really kept up with it, we've effectively segmented Copilot for consumer and Copilot for enterprise. And so Copilot for consumer, it's a completely different experience than what you would get with M365 Copilot or Copilot for work. In the past, we used Copilot with commercial data protection and then just regular Copilot. And depending on how you signed into Copilot, you would either have the commercial data experience if you signed in with your Entra ID account, or you would have just the consumer experience if you signed in with just a regular Microsoft account. And that has now been completely changed. And so with that change, it actually impacts how the Copilot key will function on your keyboard. So if you're a consumer and you hit the Copilot key, you will get the Copilot experience. If you just bought a computer from Best Buy or your favorite retailer and you signed in with a Microsoft account and it's all personal, when you hit the Copilot key on the keyboard, that will open up Copilot, just the regular consumer experience. But if the device is provisioned as like an Entra ID device, you sign in with your Entra ID credentials and you autopilot join it or domain join it or what have you. The Copilot key can now open up the M365 Copilot app. And when you do that, you aren't going through that consumer experience. You're going directly into M365 Copilot app, which has been modified. I've got it on my PC now. I don't know if it's rolling out to the rest of the world yet, but I was just playing with it today, and it's different than what we're used to. It's got a different icon and everything. So that blog post there, Evolving the Copilot Key Experience, explains what the new device experience is going to be like. And then it also explains how for existing devices, you can control what the Copilot key does. And so as you guys start buying new devices, I don't think that a lot of you guys probably have a lot of devices that have the Copilot key yet, but as you start to buy new devices, your laptop keyboards are probably going to have that key. And so how that gets controlled, that blog post is going to help you understand how to do that. We also released personal data encryption back with Windows 11 24H2, and the way to control this is now available in Intune. So the blog post goes into some details about how to control. It's very similar to like how you do OneDrive known folder move, where at the beginning we're giving you access to control docs and pictures and those folders within your Windows user profile. But other vendors and application creators and providers will also have capability of tying into personal data encryption as well. And how we protect it is through Windows Hello. And so the blog post goes through how to do the configuration through Intune on those devices. We also have cloud native Windows endpoints. Begin by beginning. Jason Sandys from our Intune product team wrote a blog post about how to get started with cloud native Windows endpoints. So if you haven't tried going down that path yet, that's probably a good place to start. And then lastly, Windows 11. So with 24H2, there was an issue that I should have actually put what the issue is here instead of just the link to the page. But that link will take you directly to a known issue with Windows 11 media that was created in October and November. If you were to install Windows from a CD or a USB drive, and I don't think FFU is impacted by this. I haven't tested it, but I'm pretty sure it's not impacted by it. But there's an issue where you will not get offered Windows updates. And this is only through USB or CD-based media. The resolution or the mitigation, I guess I should probably say, is we said just install from the December cumulative update on. Any media that comes with that should be fine. But if you are installing media if you're installing with media from October or November, you will not be offered Windows updates. So click into that link to learn more. But that's an issue that kind of cropped up. I think it was posted probably like just shortly after our office hours call on the 10th. I think it was probably later on that week is when that came out. Some miscellaneous things. We got some Skilling Snack info on Windows events and communities. It's like, I think, joining the MC or the customer connection programs for a number of different products. We've got 2 new features for Universal Print to make it truly universal. This is Pull Print, and I forget the other one off the top of my head. But Pull Print is something that a lot of you guys had asked for, and it's been in preview for quite some time. So if you haven't had the opportunity to look at universal print, or it wasn't working for you in the past, I'd take a look at it again. We also, probably over the past 6 months to a year, we increased the number of print jobs. So for those of you in education that were complaining that you didn't get enough print jobs, you should get more of those now. So I would take a look at universal print again. It is part of your A3 and A5 agreements if you're using those licensing platforms with us. And so take a look if you haven't, or if it's been a little while. We've made some improvements to managing Edge for Business. Edge for Business, if you go to admin.microsoft.com, there's a place in there where you can manage Edge, but you could also do the same thing within Intune. And so what we've done now is we've combined the visibility of policies that are configured in either place. It's kind of similar to what we do with endpoint security and Defender for endpoint within Intune and Defender for endpoint. So if you go and create something in endpoint security, like an antivirus policy, that policy will show up in Defender for endpoint, and vice versa. If you go in Defender for endpoint and you create a antivirus policy, you'll see the same thing in Intune. And so we can leverage the Microsoft Graph to use two different consoles to show a single source of truth in terms of what our policies are. And so with Edge for Business, we're kind of doing the same thing, where we can show you the policies you create in Intune for Edge, as well as things that are created in Edge for Business within admin.microsoft.com. The way that I kind of see this is do most of this in Intune if you can. Although there are some things that you can only do in like the Edge for Business console. Like I think there's a way for you to like block. You can block other AI platforms if you don't want people to go to like ChatGPT or Gemini or any of those other ones. You could just click. There's a box there that you can click to block those. I don't know that we have a specific policy within Intune for Edge to do exactly that. So stuff like that, you might notice that it's a little bit different over there, but most of your policy work can be done and most likely should be done in Intune because it keeps it all consolidated in one place. We also announced Connected Cache for Enterprise and Education. This was back, I think, even before Ignite. And so I just wanted to reiterate that this is available. Again, this is another item that we fought for to get it in education, so please use it. I don't see why you wouldn't use it. If you don't know what this is, think of this kind of like as a distribution point for Intune, where we can store all of your Intune applications, Win32 apps you deploy from Intune, Microsoft Store apps, Windows updates, loads of content that you can have it stored locally, so it doesn't have to go across the WAN. So the big benefit there is A, we're going to reduce bandwidth, but B, speed. If you're deploying hundreds or thousands of devices at the beginning of a school year, having the content local is going to be a lot better than having to go across the WAN every time, especially if you're using something like Autopilot. So take advantage of Connected Cache if you haven't yet. We posted something around probably middle December. There was a 60-day reminder that went out for full enforcement mode for certificate-based authentication changes on Windows DCs. Now, this is something that's been in play for like 2 years now. So this shouldn't be a shock that this is going to happen. But full enforcement mode for certificate-based authentication changes on Windows DCs, it's going to happen in the next 2 months. So click into that. This is for your domain controllers and certificate authorities. Take a look at this post. Again, this has been something that's been coming for 2 years now. So this really shouldn't be news to most of you that are still managing on-prem Windows DCs. But go ahead and take a look at that. And then lastly, at the end of the year, I had published the FFU 2412.1. Tons of features added to that. It's probably the biggest release that we've had. And so if you haven't upgraded yet, it's beginning of the year, click into it, take a look at it. Lots of good stuff that was added this past release. And with that, we are open for questions. I know Scott. I was not harmed in fighting for Connected Cache. Yes, that is. Well, my sanity might have been harmed, but
You're still here. That's all that matters. We have you. So
this is true.
You have help. You have your help, and that's what's important.
It was not a career limiting move. All right. Let's see. Anything I missed in the chat, or are we all good? I don't know, Scott, anything? We all good in the chat?
I think so. I don't see anything we didn't answer.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Looks like Tom's got a question. What's going on, Tom?
Yeah. I've recently started doing moving into using the Intune to do my updates. I'd been using on-prem WSUS in the past. So I've been, having good luck in the updates, but I've been curious if there's a good way for me to see the update status of the machines through any of the reporting. Either I'm missing it, or I see good reporting for like feature updates. I'm a education, so I don't have the higher end patching where basically base model Intune, but I don't see a good way to see the status of is the December update on this machine or not. I'm obviously reaching out to him with PowerShell and stuff like that and looking at him that way, but I was. With WSUS, I've been used to having a console where I could see the machines, see what updates they need, whether they're up to date.
Yeah, so there's a few ways to kind of look at this. There's something called Windows Update for Business Reports that's available, and Scott's got the link right there. It's almost like we rehearsed this. But yeah, so that's the place to go to get additional insight into what's going on with Windows Update for Business. It will also give you the capability of creating your own custom reports using KQL queries. And if you're not too familiar with KQL, don't be ashamed or anything. It's not something that most people are familiar with unless you've been doing this for some time. But you can use the KQL language to generate additional reports through Windows Update for Business reports using log analytics. So that's one place to look. I know we've been adding things into Intune as well, but yeah, it looks like Mark. Mark uses that method. It took a little bit to get up and running and works well. And then that's primarily what I've been using. But there's also, I know we've been making some improvements in Intune as well to show some of this data, but as you mentioned, Tom, a lot of that has gone around feature updates.
Right.
It's been a little while since I've actually looked in the Intune console on the reports for Windows Update, but there might be some more info or some more up-to-date reports that we've added there too. But the first place I'd start is looking at the Windows Update for Business reports.
So the update for business reports, would I have access to that with just Intune permissions, or do I need higher permissions in Intra?
Yeah, so you'll need some additional permissions inside of the link that Scott had sent, the first one. Okay. That'll give you the permissions that you need. Just having Intune administrator rights won't give you everything.
Yeah, and I'm not the top admin. We're spinning up Intune in the university, and we're doing the shared setup where we have sub admins. So yeah. I don't even have full Intune admin. So occasionally I wonder if I'm just not seeing something that, is there if I had greater permissions, or if, there's so many panes of glass in between Intra and Intune. I'm not, I should have pursued the update for business reading, because I haven't really dove into that yet. Because like I said, I was just getting started with my labs and everything. Because like I said, I've already done my PCs. They've been going very well, though the reporting piece I was missing. But the computer labs, I want to know where they are, because my students are going to be using them. We have classes coming. So, those are, I like to keep a tighter handle on. So I appreciate it. I'll do some reading.
Yep. Sounds good.
Yeah. And just to elaborate on what Richard said, Tom, it's a set of Azure permissions that you'll need, and probably need to work with the Azure. So just getting more permissions in Intune itself isn't going to give you what you need with that. But
But that's
You're-
just for reporting purposes. Would those
Well,
are those
using the
permissions
Windows Update
ones that
for
would allow me to affect things?
It's the Windows Update for Business Reports is like a Azure workbook. So you go to the Azure Marketplace and your Azure administrator would add those. That's not something necessarily associated with Intune itself.
Right.
We have those reports because you can use the Windows Update for Business service as a standalone service, where
Right.
you just take some GPOs and point them up to Microsoft if you have all 80 devices, but you need some type of reporting mechanism. So they just put it there in the Azure Marketplace. It's actually included as part of your Windows licensing on your A3 licensing. So you have access to that. It's a free service and it uses the free storage that Azure provides. But there more than likely will need to be some permissions provided to you by your Azure subscription admin to make sure that you can add it and then it's segmented properly. So,
yeah, that's always been a little bit of a challenge. Our entire organization is getting used to moving from on-prem into intra, and so we've been having some issues trying to figure out how to slice and dice the licensing in a way that makes everybody comfortable.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
Permissions that don't grant me the ability to make changes, but just grant reporting, I think would be easier to discuss. But if it's something where I could negatively impact people other than myself, people tend to be a little slower.
I found a blog post that might help you that you can point to. I was just searching for that. That blog post there might give you some. You could share that with your Azure and Intune admins and that way they can give a little bit more. But Richard's going to cover these reports here in Intune.
Yeah, Mark, did you have something on the update topic to share, or just something different? Looks like your hand went down. Okay. Yeah, what I wanted to share here is that.
I was on mute. Sorry. I'm a global administrator on our tenant, right? So we're a distributed IT department in higher ed. And we don't want to give everybody full access to do everything because they'll create havoc. So somebody asked me, hey, I want Windows updates for business report. They gave me the link. I read it about 10, 15 times. I'm like, I'm going to go tackle this. Okay. I finally got the workbook set up for our tenant. And then it was like, how do you give somebody read-only access to it? And it talks about it in the prerequisites. There's a role that you can give to somebody or a group that they can then read it, and then you give them a link to access the workbook. That's how good.
Sounds like it's doable. I appreciate that.
It's doable. You'll have to read up on it. If you don't have full admin access and global and all that, you'll have to enlist whoever it is in your organization to at least get the first part set up in the workbook, and then they could role base it and scope it for people to read.
Yeah, take a look at that last link I dropped in the chat. That goes into specifically what I think you're going to need, and it has some other links to other things that can help you. It takes you through step by step how to set all that up for like different groups and stuff. So take a look at that. I think that'll give you exactly, Tom, what you need to take back to the rest of your team and implement it the way that you would want to.
Perfect.
All right, and then what I wanted to share is that within the reports node under Windows Updates, there's this new Windows Update distribution report. I don't know exactly when we put this in here, but I think it kind of got slid in, and there wasn't really a whole lot of discussion about it. But most of the reports you see in here are we have 3 feature update related ones. We have your Windows Update distribution report, and this is for the quality updates that come every Patch Tuesday. Then we have our expedited update report, and so these are the updates that, if there's a 0-day patch or something that comes out that you need to patch immediately, your security team's like, hey, we need to push this out now. We can't wait the normal deferral period that we have. Then expedited updates are what you would use, and then to report on this, that's what this is. And then we have the driver update report. So this update distribution report, this shows the various updates that have come out. And so what you'll see are these the date, and then the B and D release. So the B release, so A, B, C, D, A is week 1, B is week 2, C is week 3, D is week 4. So the B release is Patch Tuesday. That's the second Tuesday of the month. D is the fourth Tuesday. That's our non-security. Effectively, it's like your quote unquote preview release of the non-security features that we're adding to that patch. So what most people do is they deploy the B releases. They don't really deploy the D releases. So if you were curious, hey, what happened in December with the December security update, you click into that, we generate a report, and then it's going to list all of the different Windows versions that you have against that quality update, because 2024-12B, that works for Windows 10 and Windows 11. So in my environment here, I've got mostly Windows 24H2 devices now. I can see the different build numbers depending on what I've deployed, and I've got 22H2, 23H2, 24H2, and then I can click on the devices that are on that update or the devices that need the update. So if I've got a bunch of machines that don't have the update, I then get dragged into this different report that's got a number of different drop downs that I can click through. But as you click into there, it's going to generate the report in real time. So it's not historical data. It's going to go out to Intune. It's going to find the data, and then it's going to report it back to you. So it takes some time for these things to all come up. Not sure how long this is going to take, but once it
So
does.
this is showing all the devices. I was a little confused by this because you have the quality update section, which is different than the update rings. And so I wasn't really clear if this was a report of like the actual update status of everything, or if it was just reflecting if I had made a quality update, because when I first played with the quality updates, I was like, oh, I'm making one of these for a specific month. It's not like I permanently set it and say, do the latest one. It is like you said, it's expedited. At least that's the way I understood it, where I say, I really want this one to go quickly.
Yeah. So the quality, yeah. So where this gets confusing, because this really should be like expedited updates. This shouldn't say quality updates, but what you're doing is you're expediting a quality update. So in this case, when I create this is where I can expedite. And so this is where I want to get that 0-day patch. I want it to get out like today. Right. And these are the number of days I want to wait before a restart happens. So if my security team's like, hey, I got to go now. I don't care about reboots. I don't care about user data, whatever. We just need the thing to go out. This is where you'd go to do that. But it is good. You're absolutely right. Because that should not say quality. It should say expedited quality updates or something to indicate that it's different, because update rings.
So that one report is actually the status of my entire fleet.
Correct. It's not the status of
the ones that are targeted by a quality, expedited quality. Okay.
Because if you look at my environment, I don't push out quality updates. I let my update rings do what they're supposed to do, and so in my reports, you saw that I had data in there.
Okay. I was confused by that. I wondered that because, and looking at the report's a little confusing to look at. So I dug into it a couple times, but when I decided I wasn't using the expedited quality, I kind of ignored that report, which I shouldn't have.
Yeah. So this, like I said, this is relatively new. I don't exactly know when we slipped this in here, but it's completely different from most of the other reports. And so, because this has been one of the somewhat pain points, it's like a lot of customers don't even know that when Windows Update for Business reports is even a thing. It's not like we tell you in the Intune console, click here, go set up Windows Update for Business reports. It's like, unless you looked at the docs or unless you kind of talked to us or heard it from someone else, you may not even know that it's there. So we put this report in there to kind of give you something that tells you what's going on with your quality updates. But I think this is kind of, if you've been in Intune for a while, you may have missed that this was even released because you thought, okay, we didn't even have reports.
I had seen it, but the report was confusing, and I have to admit I didn't dig into it as far as I should have, because it looks like it probably does give me what I need.
Yeah, I think it probably was, because I think what most are probably concerned about is, okay, how many devices don't have the latest update? And so I can click into here. I can, like we saw earlier, I got the devices and it shows me which ones don't have them, and then I can go and investigate why that might be.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. What else we got here? Speaking of updates, I'm interested in the feature update deployment rollout option. Make update available gradually. When reading the doc about the rollout, it mentions subsets and offer groups. Are these something that Intune Azure handles behind the scenes and don't need any involvement from me in creation management? I'm gonna guess that you're talking about under feature updates. Talking about this, right? Gradual updates. They're talking about Aaron. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. I'm of two minds on using this. The part of me likes to have a little more control than random groupings that Microsoft just kind of creates on your behalf, and you really have no idea what's going to go when. You just know that I've set this up and this is the last date. So you really have no control over, outside of setting like the number of days between the groups. You don't have much else control over any of this. So depending on your environment, and if you're okay with just people randomly getting the upgrade whenever it just comes out, then I think that's fine. But I think in a lot of environments, we kind of want more control. And so you probably set some of the other rollout options. But yeah, a lot of the stuff's just kind of handled behind the scenes, and there's nothing that you really do. Like, you're not creating additional groups. It's not like creating collections in Config Manager or even creating dynamic groups in Entra. It's something like we do the grouping on your behalf within the Windows Update for Business deployment service. And so again, to me, I'd kind of like to have more control than less. And so this is something that I don't generally recommend, unless you have people that we don't really care. Like if they go to Windows 11 24H2, they can go whenever. It'll come whenever it happens. That's, I guess it just depends on the environment. Is anyone else using the gradual rollout at all? Maybe I'm just crazy. Yeah, I mean, for most of us in education, at least what I generally recommend is we tend to see that we want to keep the devices on a specific build for the school year. Now, this could be different for your faculty or administrative folks, but for the most part, most want to keep things on the same build and keep everything consistent. And so in that respect, what most will do is at the beginning of the school year, they're most likely going to be a version behind on Windows. So if the school year starts in August or September, we don't really release a Windows build until October. So our release timing is off for education. So 24H2 came out October-ish, beginning of November, somewhere around there. You probably weren't deploying 24H2 at that time. You're probably deploying 23H2 for the whole school year. And then, this coming summer, you might come in here and change to 24H2. So that's generally what I recommend, is to keep everyone pretty much a version behind. And then once the new school year rolls around, you can change your feature update deployment to 24H2. And then for the rollout options, just make it available as soon as possible, or make it available on a specific date if you want. So, all right, with that, we're at time. So thanks everyone for joining today. It's a good call. Thanks for all the questions. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care, everyone. Have a good one.